Hello and welcome to Maximum Code. My name is Max and I've been hosting the YouTube channel Maximum Code for the past year. In this video we're going to do a little bit something different. I've been asked a few questions about how to get into development by some friends, and also I have participated in some boot camps with some folks who wanted to have some professionals come in and review the participants in the boot camp and their projects, and then answer their questions about how professionals are in the real world and what they can expect from their prospective future. So I decided to kind of collect all of those questions and kind of put it together. Especially this is designed towards folks who are brand new, who have held no experience in the market as a developer and are interested into how to become a developer, what the roadmap looks like. Now, generally, when folks think about becoming a programmer, they'll just go do some research and find boot camps or programs that they can do or on their own, and start coding right away, and at the end of it they hope to get a professional job. Unfortunately, that's not quite the correct thinking. You need to have a plan before you even actually decide what kind of boot camp you want to go to and what kind of programming language or anything like that you want to do. And the plan is really simple. First, you need to understand what's out there and what do you really want to do. So let's kind of go over some of the positions that are available, so that way you can figure out the path in which way you want to go. And again, as I mentioned, this is geared towards people who have no experience in the technology sector. So if you already have a position, this may sound a little bit boring to you. There are multiple positions. You can get started with, let's say, working for a company doing help desk, and that's basically working with network printers, networking issues, mail, setting up people's applications in their computers, or setting up computers, rebuilding, extracting information from bad drives, changing video cards and things like that. And that's basically what help desk does. You'll write some scripts, and that's to automate the application installation, or even the Windows installation, or Mac, or some other operating system. And then there's another aspect of it. Depending on the company, you could still be doing a little bit of networking as well, setting up network directory, Active Directory with users logging in and so forth, and managing servers. And then there's the security aspect of it, where you are in charge of making sure that the company is secure and that nobody's able to hack into the system. And then there's the other side of it, where you are a software developer, and basically, again, depending on the size of the company, you could do multiple, you can wear multiple hats and do multiple, work on multiple positions. And basically you'll be developing not just on one language, on multiple languages, maybe JavaScript, PHP, C#, C++, Java, and you know, the languages can vary depending on the company. And then you can also have the database administrators who will maintain databases. You don't need to have a whole lot of experience as far as a developer in database, but you do need to know how to maintain and administer databases, tables, indexes, and things like that. You'll be mostly working in doing a lot of T-SQL, setting up jobs and so forth, bringing data in, extracting data out, and maybe some analytical databases for doing reporting and such. But mainly, so those are the different positions that are out there for you, and really think about which one really resonates with you. whether you want to go to security, whether you want to do help desk, or you want to do development or databases. Now again, depending on the company role, how small they are, you might be an engineer and still administrate a database. You could be working in a team of 2 to 5 or even larger, again depending on the company. So really think about what you want to do. The advice I give usually is, again, what interests you. Do you want to help people, like help desk? And now generally most people want to get into this because the security aspect of it, as far as the monetary income that they can have. So with help desk, you are going to hit a certain ceiling. It's not going to be as lucrative as a developer, but it's pretty easy job to do, depending how eager you are in learning computers and hardware and networking. And then you can slowly go up to becoming a manager, and have a better income. But if you are starting off as an entry level, your income is going to be a little bit less. And you can do a quick research on Glassdoor or some other websites, and you'll find that the scale rate, or you can just do some Google search and you can see what that looks like for you. And then for the network security, this is going to require a little bit of more experience as far as learning the different technologies that are out there to keep the company secure. So this is not something, I mean, you can definitely learn on the job if the company is willing. They might even put you on training to learn this. Probably not as someone who have never had experience, but if you get into maybe help desk and then you show interest after a year or so, there are ways for you to kind of cross that bridge, and the company will help you out, again depending on the company. Otherwise you're going to have to take some classes on your own to gain the experience and knowledge and skills to be able to get in your foot in the door. As far as the value of what kind of income you're looking for, it's pretty lucrative. You can make very good money. Again, you can do the research, and you'll see that it's a pretty good field to get into. But there's not a lot of programming. Although you'll do some scripting, it's not something where you'll be writing code day in and day out. And then there is the database administration. For this one, again, you need to understand databases. It's somewhere between the security and help desk as far as the value, at least the entry level of it. And then once you get in and you have the experience, then the income will go higher. As far as the developers and engineers, where we'll spend most of our time talking, and guidance is going to be a little bit different. You'll start off probably pretty low in the bottom, depending again on the company and how eager you are to wanting to get your foot in the door. You could start somewhere between 40 and 60,000 a year, just starting for your first year or so. Some companies pay a lot more than that. And they'll probably pay between 60 and 80. Again, that depends on the company. And then once you get a little bit of experience, that ladder will get higher and higher. You can definitely make over 100,000 if you're somewhere intermediate to experienced developer. And again, that depends on what you're doing. In a developer, you also have the back end, you have middle, and then they call front end. Front end is where you do all of the UI UX development, and that's basically HTML, CSS, JavaScript. The middle is where you do all the APIs, and then the back end is where you do all of the extracting of the data to be provided to the middle layer, and then goes in all the way to the front end. But again, depending on the company, you could be doing all of those. There's a people use the term full stack, and basically that's what the full stack does, is they do all of the front end, the CSS, the HTML, and then they'll do the APIs, and as well as go to database, grab the data, and get that data presented to the front end. So now that you have a pretty good idea of all the different fields, and do your research to see which field you feel comfortable. You can start off as a help desk and trying to then move over to other areas, or start as a DBA and then move to software development. So you can definitely do those types of transitions. If you're definitely going for a software development and that resonates with you, and that's what you want to do, then what you need to do is you need to plan on the type of companies you want to work for. Do you want to go for the Microsoft, Google, Facebook, the Amazon, these bigger companies? If you do want to go with them, they're going to require data structure knowledge and algorithm. So you need to be, even though you're going to be new to programming, you need to be able to understand those. Now, the reason you need to understand those is because they're solving very specific problems, and they're trying to make sure that you are a person who can solve problems. But when you go towards the smaller to middle companies, those mom and pop shop where they have 4 or 5 developers, or somewhere in between where they have a team of 10 to 20, and then things change a little bit. It's not so much about the data structures, algorithms, although you need to have some knowledge of that. It helps. They're mainly developing websites, and they're not doing something so performant that requires you to build stuff from scratch or have that knowledge. Although depending on the company you go to, they might ask you questions in your interview. So once you figure out whether you want to go for a smaller company, my recommendation is that because you're entry level, you're totally brand new, start with the smaller to medium-sized companies. Get your foot in the door, get at least 1 year experience. If you're working for that company after a year, depending on how well you've done, make sure you do a yearly review where you stand, and you've done really well and have been a top performer, then you can ask for a raise and position to see if you can level up. If not, you'll have a 1 year experience, which will help you get into other companies, and that way you can raise your salary. My recommendation is that if you have a year to 2 years experience and you're deciding to make a move to a different company, don't do a lateral transition, meaning that if you make 100,000, don't go to another company that's also paying 100,000. Make sure that you're comfortable if you're going to do that. Make sure if they're going to pay you, they have better benefits or other things that are more in line with your interests and where you want to go. So the first advice, as I mentioned, is really sit down, decide what you want to do. And then second, once you decided what you want to do, think about the companies you want to get into. So now that you have that and you have a pretty good understanding, next you need to decide what you want to do on your own, by watching YouTube or reading blogs, doing learning your own, buying some books, or you want to get into these boot camps, or even go back to school for computer science and do something with that. My advice is that if you want to quickly gain the knowledge and skill, it would be a boot camp. And the next question is, well, which boot camp, where do you want to go? And that really depends on you. You have to do your research, do your homework. Don't just settle for the first school that you find or the first company that's going to teach you the skills. Make sure that you have at least 3 options of the different places, and then talk to the people and ask the same exact questions. As far as, you know, what did they teach, what their job placement looks like afterwards, how long is the boot camp, what the cost is. Make sure you cover everything, and ask the same questions for everybody, and just have a matrix and kind of like different swim lanes, and then you can put in all of the pros and cons, and then at the end of it, when you're ready, look at those pros and cons and see which one do you really want. Do you want to pay more because you're getting more benefit, or do you want to pay less because you want to do some of the stuff on your own, or however that works out for you. You do have to remember that if you're going to go to these boot camps, you are doing probably about 2 months, 8 weeks, maybe 12 at the most, and it's going to go very fast. So you need to make sure that you are totally focused into learning. Don't think that this is just like school, you have time. It's not going to work out that way for you. Make sure that, you know, you have the time to spend when you're going into these boot camp, and that's what the boot camp is. They're gonna basically, you're drinking from a fire hydrant, and so you need to make sure that you have the time for this. It makes it pretty complex if you have a full-time job and then you're doing this at night, which means that on your weekends you have to sacrifice that time to make sure that you learn the previous week what was the information that was given to you. So hopefully this advice gives you an idea of what to do. So now let's say you decided that you wanted to get into a boot camp. Before you even get into the boot camp, you need to structure your resume. I know people kind of say, oh, resume comes at the end. It isn't. Just when you decided that, hey, these are the type of companies I want to work for, you need to go look at some of the job placements of what they're asking for, what kind of skill sets they want, what kind of experience they want, and then formulate a resume based on that, because those are the skills you want to have in your resume. And this goes back to selecting the boot camp, to make sure that the resume you want at the end is the skills that you're going to gain from this boot camp or whatever you're doing on your own. And do give yourself a timeline as well. So so once you have an idea of what's going to go in your resume, because you probably have, you know, you're coming maybe as a waiter or a waitress or hostess, or, you know, working in other environment as construction or something, and you don't have any experience into the technology, you should tailor your resume in a way that it boosts your skill set, your organization skills, and so forth. So go look at your communication skills. So go look at the jobs that people are posting, and then instead of extracting the technology that you need to know, extract what kind of skills like communication and all this other stuff we talked about, what they want out of that, and organization skills and all that. And then that's what you want to make sure that you fill into your resume based on your experience. If you were, you know, in construction, and let's say you're managing a job site, that speaks for your scheduling and communication and managing number of people. So that's how you want to structure your resume, to showcase these personal skills that you do have, because you don't have any technology experience. Now, to fill the gap on the technology experience, go make sure you have a GitHub or some kind of a presence on the web where you're going to post your everything that you're going to do in the boot camp, or if you're doing it on your own, all these websites and the little projects that you build, and post those up and have that. Something else you want to do is, even before getting into these boot camps, make sure that you talk to family members or other people who are in the technology sector. Go to LinkedIn, make a profile for yourself, make sure that your profile on LinkedIn kind of matches your resume, and talk to these people and start creating a network. All this has to happen before you do anything with technology, and a lot of people try to do it afterwards. You're gonna get bombarded with trying to, what do I do? Submit my resume, do my interviews, and at the same time do all this stuff. So you don't want that. You want to make sure that you have a nice plan before you get there, so that when you're done with your training and your education, the only thing you have to worry about is how to present yourself when you are doing the interviews. So start your networking, and people that you admire, or blogs, websites, and YouTube channels, and folks that you have, just go and become a member, join communities. There are network with anybody that you can, and there's meetings with different technologies that you can have meetups and so forth, and kind of just, even though you have no experience, just be a fly on the wall, just sit there and listen to the people. And then most important out of this is, when you sit there and you listen to all of the people, everyone you've seen, find one or two people who you look up to, or you think that these are good people that can help you and guide you and mentor you, basically. And that's really the key here, is to have a mentor. Mentors aren't just people who are going to teach you programming. Mentors are people who are going to guide you through your career. Maybe you had something personal happen, and that's interfering with your work or your school. That's what the mentor is for, to kind of sit down with you, kind of look at it from the outside and guide you. When you're choosing a mentor, make sure it's not someone like a family member or someone close to you. Your mentor really should be someone from the outside, so that when they're giving advice, they're not invested in you as a friend, because friends will always tell you nice things, which is good, but they may not be as upfront or critical in certain areas when they're helping you, trying to guide you in certain ways. And make sure that at least once a month you have a meeting, if not more, with your mentor, to see, kind of getting advice, and make sure that you have a plan of what you're going to talk about, when you're selecting a mentor. Now, choosing a mentor, you should just, you can't just go and say, oh, you know what, Bill Gates, pretty good person that I wanna have him be my mentor. So be realistic with your expectations, and what works really best is formulate a email, and be very specific to what you're asking. Say, hey, let's say it's a YouTube channel or a blog post that someone has. Just send them an email saying, hey, I know you're very busy with your personal and professional life. I really do appreciate all the blog or YouTube videos or development or whatever that he or she is doing in the community, and I'm really interested in getting into development and programming, and I am looking for a mentor. Would you mind having a coffee? Well, we're now in COVID, so maybe coffee would work, or maybe a coffee and a walk somewhere to kind of discuss your idea of mentorship and what you want to do in your change of career, so that this person can give you some guidance, or what are they want to choose to help you be a mentor. So now that you have all of this information, you should be ready to start working on your development skills. When you're developing any kind of a programming, a lot of people go, well, what language should I use? There's Python, there's C#, there's Java, there's JavaScript, C++, assembly, or any other languages that are out there. It really doesn't matter about the language, and here's why. All languages have their pros and cons, but they have one thing in common. When you're writing a program, it's kind of like giving directions to a person who wants to go from point A to point B, right? So you tell them like, okay, get in your car, head on this street, north or south or west or whichever direction, go about 2 traffic lights, and then hang a right, and then hang a left, and then do this and do that. And that's exactly how programming languages are. Let's say you want to read a file and you want to process it. The first thing you want to do is you say, does the file exist in this location? Yes, it does. Okay, now let's go ahead, read the file, and then read it line by line, and then check to see if the data is there, and if it is, put it into the database, right? So it's just a basic set of instructions, a workflow basically of if, else, and switch statements and so forth. And that's really all programming languages have in common. So once you understand, and that's as a developer, you want to set your mind so that you are thinking along those lines of how to put these conditions within the program. It doesn't matter the syntax of what it looks like. JavaScript and C# and Java or even C++ and C are very much in line as far as their formatting and the keywords that they use. But Python, Ruby, or PHP, or some other language may not be the same, but they still have those common functionalities of if the file exists. The syntax might be different, but you have to remember that the steps you go through are going to be, that workflow is going to be exactly the same. So all you have to do is familiarize yourself with the syntax of the language. You have the rest. So that's basically how you want to learn programming. Don't focus on learning specifics of a language, because you are an entry-level programmer. No one expects you to know, the full details of a language. Again, when you're doing the interviews, it depends on the company, so they can give you, questions that might be pretty advanced. So that's basically the mindset you want to have when you're going through your education and your training. Now, when you're done with your training and your education, and you just want to make sure you're following your plan, and then next, let's say now you've finished, you have all of the projects and stuff like that, and you have your LinkedIn profile, and one of the other things you want to do while you're still in school is to make network to the people, the teachers, your other students that you're collaborating and working, and make sure that as each project you work on, you ask them to give you feedback on your LinkedIn profile. In this way, people can see the skills that other people are recommending you for. So that's important to do. Just ask, and then you do the same for them. If they're good at database backend stuff versus front end or whatever, just make some very professional comments. And if you need help with writing that, you can always Google or go look at other people's profiles and see what was said about them, and then try to formulate your thinking, and then put the language together and then post it on their profile. And while you're doing all of this, as you're liking certain posts in LinkedIn, or you're maybe have a Twitter account or whatever, be very careful to what you like and what you don't. Make sure that you are being very specific to the technology that you're working with. Most people sometimes post some things outside of the technology, perhaps maybe political or something else, or some social stuff that they comment on. Try not to click on those, because especially on LinkedIn, if you go to someone's activity and you can see the things that they posted, or the things that they clicked and liked. So just make sure that you're focusing specifically on technology. If you do have a Twitter account or a Facebook account or some other social networking account, before you do all of this, go clean it up. Make sure that you don't have whatever it is there deleted, and make sure that there's nothing in there that would not line up with the company policies and rules and guidelines of the company that you want to work for. Because if they find those things, they may reflect poorly on you, and it may cost you a position. So just be careful with your presence online. Be always mindful that someone is there watching. You can have another account that's totally separate, that you can post your opinions and different things that you want to do, but make sure that your presence as an engineer, as a developer, is very focused towards that. So now that you have made some networking and people posting some comments and basically are approving your skill sets on LinkedIn, the next step is applying to different jobs, which sites you go to. There are many websites for jobs. There's a lot of you can go to Dice, you can go to Monster, LinkedIn. They all have I'm sure there's other job sites that you could go to that people are posting. And what you want to do is when you have a resume, in your resume, make sure that you're highlighting your skills. Start off with a problem that you were given and how you solve that problem. So that's basically what your resume should outline. Now, other people will give you some different type of advice on what the resume and how it should be formatted and stuff like that. So just make sure you do your research and then find what you want to put in your resume, because ultimately you have to decide how your resume is structured and what type of information it's going to have. The advice that I can give you on that is that don't think that you're going to write one resume that's going to apply to all the companies that you're going to apply for. You won't stand out when you're doing that. If you're going to apply to a certain company, make sure you go read the description and skill sets that they're looking for. Tailor your resume to match those keywords and the skill that they're looking for, so that when you're submitting, because most of the companies or folks that are hiring, they might go through some filter, and if you don't have a good match, then you probably won't stand up to the top 10 list or whatever, because I'm sure there are thousands of people applying for the same positions as you are. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas about your resume and what should be in there. You could always, if you have the time, or if you know someone who's good, and is in a technology position, they can show them your resume to see how you should tailor it, how you should format it. Again, so because you're coming in from a background that is not technology specific, your resume is going to look like blank. I remember when I came out of high school and I wanted to go get a job, my brain was like, what do I put in this resume? There's nothing there. But you can put, for example, your you could put in there things for, we'd mentioned before, some of the skills you have, your communication, your organizational skills, your attention to detail. All of these things matter. and start adding those. And as far as the technology, make sure that you put in all the projects that you worked on. Do put in the previous jobs that you worked on to show how many years you stayed or what kind of progression you made going up the ladder. So let's say you worked at McDonald's. Not that working for McDonald's is a bad thing. Doesn't matter if you're sweeping floors. It's a job, right? And that's what matters. But the progression you want to show is that you started off at the bottom and you climbed up the ladder, right? So to show that you're hungry and that you are a go-getter, basically. The other thing is that you want to show that you have worked for companies longer than a year to 2 years. Now, depending, maybe you're a contractor or something, and you did a couple of months here, a couple of months there, and make sure you highlight those, that these were contract work so that people understand. If you do have gaps between your jobs, you need to be able to explain those because people will ask and say, well, how come you had 3 months before you went from this job to that job? Because it can look poorly on you in the way that, oh, it took this guy 3 months to get a job. Unfortunately, people do look at those. When you're interviewing, people will kind of look into a couple of different scenarios of or structures of how you fit the company. People want to hire like-minded people. So when you hear advice like, before you do interview, go on the website of the company, right? What they're really saying is that do your homework and see what kind of mindsets are working in this company or what the company's product is. It's not about making sure you know this company was founded a certain year or who the CEO is. It's great to know that, yes, but you need to know what their mission is. And that way you know that the question, those soft skill questions that they'll ask you that were when you answer, that are in line with their guidelines, basically. So so hopefully this is going to help you out through that. With the technical skills, if someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, make sure that you specifically say, I don't know. What it's going to do, one, is it's going to stop the person asking more questions about that area. But what you should follow up with, I don't know, is how you would go and learn this. And the next question usually is going to, people come back and is going to say, well, how long do you think it's going to take you to learn this, or this language, or this technology? And you can base that on, if you want to do the boot camp, you can then say, well, I went to the boot camp and I learned database and I learned HTML, HTTP protocol and so forth, and that was 8 weeks. And if it's a specific language, as a beginner to intermediate, it probably will take you 4 to 6 weeks. So then you can give that kind of an answer. Don't just go out and just say, oh, I think it'll take me 2 weeks. By explaining how you came to that 2 weeks or that 4 or 6 weeks, that'll ease their mind that, oh, okay, this person is analytical and is thinking, and they know how to go from 0 to where they want to be, right? And so that's gonna hopefully help out. Now, another thing you want to do in an interview is talk about the things that you do know. The more you talk about the things you know, the more questions you'll get about that area. Again, this depends on the interviewers, but most of the time this will be the case. So this way, when you leave the interview, let's say the interview is about 45 minutes. Out of the 45 minutes, let's say 30 minutes of it is spent talking about the things that you know, is in a way more than, let's say, 30 minutes of the things you don't know. The other thing you want to do is make sure you're driving the interview. What I mean by that is that when the person is asking you a question, by talking, especially they ask you a question about JavaScript and you know the answer, make sure that you give examples. In this way then they follow up, right? So this is how you structure and drive the interview in the direction that favors you. So basically that's what you want to do. Now the first few interviews you do are going to be nerve-wracking for you, especially if you haven't done a technology interview, and this is where the mentoring and other people you work with will help. Depending on the boot camp, if they have professionals coming in, ask them, hey, would you mind if you interview me after this presentation or whatever, and that way you get some experience of what kind of questions people would ask. You can always Google this stuff too, like what kind of questions people ask for entry level. Don't sweat too much about the technology specific questions, because you're entry level, you're green, you don't have a whole lot of experience except the boot camp. So people are understanding and they know. What you're going to be based on when they ask you these technical questions or other skills that they might be looking for is how well are you going to be able to hit the ground running, and how well you're going to be able to adapt and learn. And that's what they want. They want people who's going to learn. So now that you kind of talk to some friends and mentors and other people about the interview and the questions, and you're now somewhat comfortable, your first, I would say, 4 interviews should be with companies that you don't much care for whether you get a job or not. Again, it's because you do this because you want to get the experience of interviewing, not the trying to go for those companies you really like and you want to really go in. Because if you don't have the experience of the interview and you get nervous and then you kind of not think very clearly in your answers, then chances are you're not going to do very well in the interview. So once you get a little bit of experience in the interview process, then apply to the companies that you do want to. Because you're entry level, a lot of people will ask, well, how do I know if I qualify for a job? Because they're asking for the technologies and stuff and experience that I don't have. Of course, everybody, when they post a job posting, they're gonna put a lot of information about what the company is looking for. You don't have to 100% match that. So my guidance is that look at the company and all of the bullet points that they have. If you can say, I match about 70%, 60 to 70% of the bullet list, apply for the company. What's the worst that can happen? They say no, or you don't even hear from them. No problem. And so just make sure that you stick to your plan. And one of the things you want to do is when you're doing your resume, spend one day, 20 minutes, go look for a position that you want now that you have the experience. Tailor your resume to fit that, apply. The next day, pick up another company, do the same thing. You're not going to get your first job in the first week. Now, some people are lucky and they will get the job because they applied first, they got interviewed, and they were liked, they were very personable and likable, and they make an impression. And so, yeah, they're going to have a better chance. So don't give up. Even if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. In my experience, I've seen people out of boot camp 3 months later, they get a job. And that's what you have to do. You have to continue not giving up and continue to go forward. Now, when you come out of the boot camp, all your time is not going to get spent trying to find a job. You want to continue learning because your learning doesn't stop. So make sure that after the boot camp, you spend at least an hour, if not more. If you want to get a job, I would say more than an hour a day developing and programming. Find things that you want to replicate, like I want to create a job site, I want to create Instagram site, I want to create whatever, and mock it up and go through the process of developing those. It builds up to your portfolio, basically, right? All the projects that you've done, now these are the projects that you're doing on your own. There are websites you could go to, and people post projects that they want to work on, or want folks to come and help them build it. Go to those websites and apply to those. They don't pay very well, but it's experience, and it will help you build your portfolio. Those are also hard because you'll get 10-15 people applying, and the best person wins, or the person who has the skill sets. Don't be if you don't get the first one, that's okay. Keep applying, keep pushing, continuing, just progressing, basically, and eventually you'll find and you get into the company that you want to work for. So now that you start your first job, what should you expect on your first week? My experience have been that on the first week that you start, it's really more of a company 101. You'll get your badge or your computer or your desk or your networking, your logging, all this stuff, access to the source code, all of setting the stuff up. That's basically what's going to happen. Probably less than a week, maybe for some companies, depending on the software. So others will be a little bit more. The next thing that company might do is they might partner you with someone a little bit more experienced to kind of guide you, on projects and stuff. And then after, I would say, about a month, 2 months, it'll be on your own, and then you get to contribute to the company going forward. So when you get your first job, and you're doing the interview, one of the most important things that you want to do is, because you're new, even if you're not it's not your favorite company, take the job, even if it doesn't pay what you're expecting, because the idea behind it is that you want to get the experience. That's okay if it doesn't pay $100,000. It's okay. Get that experience, and then after a year and a half, either ask for a raise or promotion to see if you can progress through the company. If not, start looking for another position. Now that you have experience, it should be a lot easier, right? Just like before, make sure you plan this out, which companies you want to go to and all that, and tailoring your resume and so forth. And then, once you go to the next company, you'll have a better income. Once you get like maybe 2 to 3 years of experience, make sure that you're staying with the company longer than 3 years, because most people, when they're applying, let's say now you become mid-level to senior engineer, it's frowned upon when you're staying with a company for a year and then you go to another company for a year, because companies that are hiring you, it's going to take you about around 6 months to learn their product, and they're investing time and money in you, because they're paying you a salary and so forth, right? And they don't want you to stay for a short time. They want you to stay at least 2 to 3 years. And if you really look at Glassdoor or some other sites and do your research, longevity of engineer is about around 3 to 4 years. I mean, it probably differs other people's experience, but that's usually has been what I've seen. Most people stay with different companies, and that's really what people do, is they go from company to company, because as they leave from one company to another, they're getting a better position, they're getting a better salary, and so their lives get better. So make sure that you have, once you start working, you plan out how you're going to climb up that ladder. So, just as we planned out before even, learning anything, you need to do the same thing. So as soon as you get into a company and you're learning their product and everything else, start planning out your career. Set with your mentor so you can have some real expectations of what you're supposed to expect. So now that you have a pretty good idea and a good plan, hopefully this advice was helpful to you and getting you the information that you need. Hopefully it answers most of your questions. If not, please leave a message or just comment on the video, or you can send me a personal message through the YouTube channel or my LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have and hopefully guide you in your career and get your dream job and get you set up. All right. Well, thank you so much for your support and watching this video. I appreciate it. Hopefully it helped and to illuminate your career path. Thank you, and bye-bye. Stay safe.